Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of The Standard is the Standard. And if you look to my side here, well, that's not Lance Williams. That's Bryan Anthony Davis, who's filling in for Lance Williams. Want to give Lance a big shout out. Lance is now a grandfather. That's right. Yes, Lance Williams is now a grandfather. Want to give a shout out to his grandson, Nija Mims, out there. I don't know if it's on, I'm assuming it's out on the West Coast. Lance is going to visit the newest addition to his family. So congrats to him. Big shout out to the newest Steeler fan born into the cloth. And with that, my co-host tonight, Bryan Anthony Davis. How's it going, Bryan?
I am so glad to be called up to the A show. This is a big deal for me. In fact, the family got me a cake when they found out I was doing this show tonight.
Well, you know what? This is like old times. We said that the last time you filled in for Lance. We used to do the Steelers hangover together. That was way back in the Blog Talk Radio days, and it's good to kind of get back to our roots a little bit. And so we're going to get to the title of this episode. Not right away, but I want to tease it a little bit, and that is, are the Steelers officially back? Those in the live chat, you can obviously chime in whatever you like, but we're going to answer this in a little bit. Before we get into where the Steelers are going, let's talk about where they came from. Now they're 4-4. That's obviously simple math. That's 8 games. That's halfway through. I want to go through some mid-season grades with you, or some awards. Bryan, are you ready for that?
Yes, I am.
Very good. So let's go with, who would be your mid-season offensive most valuable player? This is a tough one because the offense hasn't been good.
No, it hasn't, and they're the 28th ranked offense. But for me, it's none other than James Conner. And more James Conner, the receiving running back. But even in that last game, when not the last game that he played against Miami, 150 total yards, 145 on the ground. So he showed that he was able to go ahead and really control a game with his feet. In the run game, the ground game was so much better. I really think he's the guy that has kept Mason Rudolph from falling apart. Which he possibly could have. There's really no receivers to give it to. We're not really giving it to Mason at this point. You might, but I really like James Conner for this role.
You took the player I was going to say. I think that maybe you could say, due to the injury, Jalen Samuels, but I wouldn't go that far. Maybe the offensive line in pass protection, because they have kept Mason Rudolph clean, and that's been a huge factor. And at least him checking the ball down to James Conner, he's had time to do that. So I'll go with, just to change it up and say something different, I'll go with the offensive line in pass protection. They have a lot left to be desired, I feel like, in run blocking. But in terms of pass protection, I like them. Now let's go to the defensive side. This is a tough one because the defense has been really, really good so far in the first 8 games. Who's your defensive MVP at the midway point?
Wow, you could put it so many places, and I'm not going to say who I would have because I don't want to steal any thunder. I'm probably stealing your thunder because I really think it's an obvious one. I think it's TJ Watt. I actually think he could actually be a defensive player of the year. But there are 3 or 4 other guys that I would consider on that defense.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, believe it or not, if you were saying TJ because you thought that I was going to say like Minkah Fitzpatrick, I would have said TJ first. And it's basically because, I mean, TJ Watt's body of work just continues to get better and better. Minkah Fitzpatrick obviously didn't play with the Steelers in the first 2 weeks, but has been a really dominant force in the back end since he's shown up. I think it's kind of 1A, 1B. Wouldn't you agree with these two guys?
Yeah, I really, Minkah Fitzpatrick, what he did, he came and stabilized that defense when he came in week 3, had that interception right away. Then all of a sudden the defense is playing so much better. To me, it's not a coincidence. There's another guy that I would shout out, and really to go back to what you said, I was stealing thunder. I was taking TJ all the way because that's who I thought was the number 1 guy. So I was just stealing him. But there's another guy that I would throw in as a huge honorable mention, and it's Alvin.
Bud. Yeah, absolutely.
Alvin Bud Dupree.
Or I have to call him Stud Dupree now for the rest of the season because he got more than one sack against that offensive line of the Indianapolis Colts last week. So he's having a career year in a contract year. Now, a quick sidebar here: are you a believer in the contract year? We'll call it motivation. And what I mean by that is the players that show out when they're trying to get money, and when they get that money, because they will, they never really produce after. This has nothing to do with Dupree right now, but do you believe in that at all, or do you think that he's just now starting to come into his own?
A tiny bit, but I think these are professional athletes with a lot of pride on the line, and they don't want that stigma of saying, "Hey, he got the money, and now he's just going to just lay back and hang out." I think a guy like Bud Dupree has 26 sacks in his career, so he's not Jarvis Jones. And so everybody wants to put him in that bust category with Jarvis Jones. Up to this season, and I really don't see it that way. I think it's a possibility, but I don't think that was Bud all along. I think you brought it up, and I actually watched the show the other day, the post game, and it was either you or Lance who brought it up, and I loved this. Was the fact that I think Chris got this quote that you were quoting Chris. The fact that he said, "They're just letting me play my game now." And that might coincide with Joey Porter being gone and maybe Butler having more time with the outside linebackers, the edge rushers. But I really think that he's playing his game. He's not overrunning anymore. I really like what he's doing.
Yeah, that was Christopher Carter of DK Pittsburgh Sports is the one who spoke with Bud Dupree during training camp, and that's what he said in regards to the difference between 2018 and 2019. It almost sounded like Joey Porter was trying to turn him into a tactician when he's not. He's an athletic freak. So let him do athletic freaky things, speed rush, bull rush, and it's working. And it's just crazy, though, when you look at the logistics of Joey Porter's dismissal and Keith Butler taking over a position that he owned during the Dick LeBeau era and did a very good job coaching the linebackers during that time. People don't realize he played linebacker in the National Football League for Seattle. So he knows what he's talking about. And now all of a sudden things are kind of turned around and you see some tremendous outside linebacker production from that group. So this next one's going to be a tough one too, the next award, and that is most improved player. Who would you give that one to? There's a couple names that come to my mind when I think about this.
I would probably are we going offense and defense?
Anyone on the team can be most improved.
Okay, so there's one I want to go for on offense, but it's not as glaring as we just talked about Bud Dupree. He is really improved. But that's not who I'm going to go with. I'm looking at Terrell Edmunds. Has improved a whole heck of a lot. You could also say the fact that Minkah Fitzpatrick came in and all of a sudden in week 3, he looked a whole heck of a lot better. He was not as exposed. So that could have been a part of it. That's why Minkah is so very important. But, I'm really thinking Terrell Edmunds is a much better player than he was even in week 1.
Edmunds is not a bad pick. I honestly wouldn't have gone with him. Right off the bat is Chris Boswell for me.
Yeah,
talk about a stark difference between 2018 and 2019. I mean, he's only missed one kick this season, and that was a 54-yarder. Not sure. We never did get a really good look on that kick that he missed. If it was going to be short, I know it was left. I didn't know if it was going to be short as well, if it did have the leg, and he just pulled it a little bit. But still, it nails that 51-yarder. He's turned it around. He's back to being the Chris Boswell that we knew from 2017. And like you said, I would put Bud Dupree in this category too. And the one thing we forgot to mention as we just talked about Dupree at length, if you're just joining the show, is my gosh, you had kind of, I think, alluded to this. He's healthy for the first time. You got to remember he battled that groin injury, the abdominal injury, had the partially torn pec. He's had like some wrist issues. He's been hurt and banged up a lot in his career. He's not dealing with anything. I knocked on wood for those that are superstitious. So who else would you put in this category for most improved?
Well, the guy on offense that I wanted to put on there, I mean, it's really not an improvement for the fact that he's just getting a chance to shine right now. And it would be Zach Banner.
Mhm.
The Hulk, I guess we're calling him the Hulk now because of
And
David Banner. And
he's been your boy from day one. I'll give you
yeah,
credit on that.
that's a guy that I loved, the Lincoln Kennedy's son, and Lincoln was a first round draft pick way back in, I believe it was 91 or 92 of the Falcons. But just a quality player. And the thing I like about him is if you see him on social media and what he's doing in the Steeler community, he's just a fantastic guy as well. He's just one of these bright shining community stars that you just love to have, and he loves being in Pittsburgh. He feels like he has found a home. Then there's another guy on defense. I'll let you grab him if you want. I think I know who you'd be going with on this, unless you want me to take him.
I mean, go. I'm trying to think who you're thinking of. Go for it.
Cam Sutton.
Oh, okay. I thought he had potential last year. He has played a lot better, though. You're right. You're right. Absolutely. Those are all good picks. And I think that there's a couple guys, like I see someone in the live chat saying James Washington. I feel like he is on the cusp and he's trending in the right direction, but I don't that's why I would put him up for that just yet.
Can
So
I give you one more?
sure.
Mike Hilton did not have a great 2018, if you ask me. And I
No.
really think he is playing a lot better football this year. He kind of bet on himself because, with that restricted, not restricted, but what
Yeah.
kind of free agent was
He's
he?
a restricted
Restricted,
free agent.
but exclusive rights restricted, something like that. But I really feel like he has come on this year and become a stabilizing force with what he's been doing. So you have some strength on that in that secondary that you didn't even expect. We have Steven Nelson coming in, which was you expected him to be pretty good, but there's a lot of depth now, and you did not have that depth before.
Right. No, so it's good when you have a long list of players that could be included as the most improved player on the team or just an improving player on the team. And so they're trending in the right direction. So, lastly, who would be your overall team MVP at the midway point at this juncture?
I've got to go back to TJ Watt. I think he has become the heart and soul of this defense and even more this team at this point. He is just the most stable force on this team, and he's becoming the poster child for this new Pittsburgh Steelers.
I agree. I think TJ Watt would be the team MVP. He's becoming the heart and soul of the team. Not just the defense. He's becoming the heartbeat. So I agree with you there. Take a quick aside here and mention that a lot of people have emailed me in the past and said, hey, how can we help the show? Well, obviously, if you've watched the show live on YouTube, you can find us on YouTube by searching BTSC Steelers Radio. You can give us a super chat donation. That is completely up to you, though. And that's where right to the bottom of the comment bar, you'll see a little money sign. And you can donate any amount of money you want to the program, and we appreciate all of that you are able to give of your hard-earned money. Now, also, a way that you can help us out that is completely free, and I understand that for some of you that might be watching on your phone, you can't give this video a like while watching in the live chat. So when you're done, when the show's over, make sure you go like the video, comment, and share it because that's going to help us differentiate ourselves from some of the other Steeler channels on YouTube. And so we thank you. So make sure you like this video, whether it's during the show or after the show. Make sure you like it. We really, really appreciate it. Lastly, Dave is in the live chat right now, and he is going to be at the game on Sunday. It's a 4:25 kickoff against the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to talk about that here coming up in a little bit. And he wants to do a little meetup with fans before the game. So he wanted me to mention that follow him on Twitter. I'm sure when he puts it in the live chat, I will post it here on the screen, and he will mention where he's going to be. If you're going to the game on Sunday, find him. He's a giant of a man. You can't miss him. And he wants to do a live show a few minutes before the game about prediction, thoughts, and just like to meet some of the people that follow the show. So it'd be pretty cool if you're going to be at the game to check him out. So once he puts his Twitter handle, I'm sure it's probably like 250 characters.
He's got room for hello,
yes.
and that's about it. I saw the last one, Jeff. The one he did before the Miami game. It made me want to just go out there, and it was exciting. It was fun. Dave looked more fun than he is when he hangs out with us. So, but it's awesome. So we have such a great BTSC community, and we love to expand it. So go hang out with Jeff. Excuse me, hang out with Dave. Don't hang out with Jeff. Or you can hang out with Jeff at his house. PM me for his address. I'll take care of that. But so go hang out with Dave. It's a lot of fun. And Dave and I and Tony, we're planning on doing this in December for a big one. So start thinking of really cool things for that December 15th tailgate, because we're coming and I'm hungry.
There you go. That's awesome. So, okay, so let's shift away from the team awards and let's go to some grades from this past game. And Dave just put his, oh my gosh, it's the same as his email.
Awesome Steeler fan, husband, dad, 1987.com. Love it, Steelers. Yes.
So it's STLR, short for Steeler, super fan dad. That's his Twitter handle. There you go. So STLR Superfan Dad. You have to follow him on Twitter. If you don't follow him on Twitter, I told him that he should just send me a text before the game. Say, hey, I just sent out the tweet. I'll go on the Behind the Steel Curtain Twitter feed, which has a lot more followers than him, and then I'll retweet it. So if you see that, then you'll get it that way. So there you go.
And you know what? They're trying to confiscate his helmet a couple times at the one gate. So
really?
He's very protective of that helmet. Yeah. So that's the thing. They tried to make him go back to his car.
Why? Why would they try to confiscate the helmet?
Because he can't have his face covered, and which is really odd because people have Halloween masks. So there you go. But like he said, the last couple of times he went into the one gate, they're trying to take his helmet. You can't take his Star Wars helmet. That would kill him.
It probably would, literally. So, okay, Brian, let's go back. You talked a lot about this Colts game with Tony on the Steelers hangover on Monday. But I want to just go back and kind of get your thoughts on grades. Now, you do the grade report for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Sometimes I feel like, and I know you've said this before, that you don't have a lot of time to really think about it. You're trying to get the article done because it's going to run the next day, and I want to go over some grades for specific players, and I want to see what grade you would give them. You do it by offense, defense, special teams, etc. I want to just get your grade on what's your thoughts on Juju Smith-Schuster in Week 9.
You know what? Really, I'm not giving Juju a pass on this at all. In the grade column, I put him in the requires improvement. I don't give him detention anymore. I just say requires improvement because it's kind of gentler bad. But I thought, first of all, the interception. Look, I know we're not trying to coddle Mason Rudolph, but that really wasn't Mason Rudolph's fault on that one interception. Now, there's a couple of balls that James Washington caught that should have been intercepted. So I'm not giving Mason a pass either. But what I'm saying on that particular throw in that first drive, Juju, that looked like Moncrief, just like boop up in the air. That could have killed them right off the bat. And so that's one of those stats. When you look at stats, you pin the interception on Mason Rudolph, but that's not his ball. I'd almost like to see a stat that says, interceptions caused, but that gets into a whole another dimension. But so We're not doing that. But what I'm saying is Juju just did not look great at all. So I could really give him a C- for, I felt like he wasn't getting open. And there was a couple times he just looked lackadaisical, and I know he's not. I know he plays with heart and fire, and Mike Tomlin came out and said Juju does so much more that you don't even know. And I agree with that. But if I'm looking just straight eye test, I'm saying that's a really rough game, one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. But I'm not worried about it. I don't think it's going to continue.
Yeah, I agree with your grade of a C minus. I thought that's very appropriate for him. But again, there's a lot of stuff that you don't see. For instance, moments where he might have beat his one-on-one coverage, and for whatever reason, maybe it was pressure, maybe it was just that he was just checking the ball down, that he'd already gotten rid of the football. Mason Rudolph didn't find him. So it's tough to grade receivers because they're so reliant on other players. Now, let's talk about a position that does not require anyone's help, and that is, well, I guess maybe with the offensive line, and that's Mason Rudolph. He had another up and down performance, but what would you grade him?
I'm probably going to give him just a little bit higher of a grade, but not much. Straight C on that. Let's go ahead, give him about, if we're going to go to college here, we'll say 75%. So he'd be right in the middle. Just, one of those games where I like the fact that he went deeper and he's finding himself going downfield. It's doesn't look like those passing charts from the early games when the offensive coordinator Randy Fichtner was coming out and saying, well, he's afraid to go downfield. We want him to go downfield. I still don't buy that. But what I'm seeing is I think he's getting his confidence and he's doing a whole lot more. I thought there's some plays that he looked poised on, but there was some that there were plays that he just did not look good at all. So I would just say an average. I'm not even going to say below average, just about a C.
Yeah, that's exactly the grade I gave him in our post-game show when Lance asked me that question. I thought that there was some good, there's still some bad, and that's going to happen, and this is a young quarterback. He's not going to have – I do expect him to have at least one game, and I would say it's going to come up sooner than later, that he has a good game, a game where we say, wow, this might be the potential that we have been talking about for so long. But this was not his game to do that. He had too many blips on the radar.
And you know what, Jeff? And everybody in the live chat don't bring out the comparisons between he and Ben Roethlisberger because his stats are better than Roethlisberger's rookie year. I understand that, and we could probably say this about Ben's rookie year too, with up and down games. But who I like to compare him to a little bit with the way he's starting out and what I see from him in the future, because I see great things from this guy in the future, but kind of reminds me a little bit of Neil O'Donnell. Because if you look okay, bear with me. I knew you were going to do that. But if you look at Neil O'Donnell's stats, 91 and 92, when they were 11-5 and shocked the world in Cowher's first season to go to the playoffs, they were the number one seed actually in the playoffs. And looking really good before they blew it to the Bills 24-3 at home. I'm still not over that. But O'Donnell, an average passing game for him was like 175 yards. And then you look at the O'Donnell from the Super Bowl year of 95, and he was, upper twos in the threes. He was doing so much more. So these young quarterbacks, and we forget he's only started 5 games in the pros, but these guys have to go through their progressions. I don't know why I'm doing that with my hand, but that's walking up steps, I guess. But they just have to elevate, and they need time. We're so spoiled because we had 15 years of Ben Roethlisberger. And of course, we're going to forget the first couple of years of Ben Roethlisberger when he was, and I heard you say this, when he was a game manager, when he was learning his trade as well. But Neil O'Donnell is the third. He is the third ranked passing in passing leaders in Pittsburgh Steelers history, and he had some good years for us. Forget about what happened in the Super Bowl. Forget about him being a sellout and all that stuff. The mafia, blah blah blah. Forget all about that stuff. What I just remember where he was and where he ended up as being a Pro Bowl passer. I could see that with Mason Rudolph, with not the extra stuff, the bad stuff that we remember about Neil O'Donnell, that we're forgetting about some of the good stuff. But this is not about O'Donnell. This is just what Rudolph can do. And so it's going to take time for him to grow into that upper echelon of a quarterback, but he could do that.
I guess for me, and everyone loves to talk about Mason Rudolph, whether you love him or whether you have reservations about him, it all comes down to your expectations of him. And I don't look at him as some people, when they think of the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger, they think, I think that sometimes they're kind of brainwashed into thinking he's like a top pick. The guy was a third round draft pick. He was not a team's first round draft pick. And so with that, that right away should temper your expectations a little bit and realize that this guy fell to the third round for a reason. Now, we all thought that was a very good value pick at the time, but at the same time, he wasn't a day one draft pick. And so with that, again, set your expectations there. Secondly, he's only started 5 games in his entire life. So I don't understand where people are talking about he's not reading the field well, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't have the anticipation. He's not throwing receivers open. There's a very small amount of quarterbacks that have played football in the National Football League that walk in the door and can do that right away. And then some people said, I got an email from someone this past week after the postgame show. It said, well, oh my gosh, with Mason Rudolph, what, did you not play in college, playing against defenses? Have you watched Big 12 football recently? There is no defense. Literally. It's basically like they're playing 7-on-7 football. Big 12, I want to say 1 year had 0 defensive players drafted in the National Football League. So when he played at Oklahoma State in the Big 12, no, there wasn't a lot of defense that he had to really focus on. So you have to put all this together. And so is he the answer at the quarterback position when Roethlisberger's done? I'm going to toe the company line if I work for the Steelers and say what Mike Tomlin said. We don't know yet. We don't know. He's only played 5 games. He's been up. He's been down. We don't know yet, period. So I like Mason Rudolph. I think he's a very good professional. He handles himself well. I think he has the look of an NFL quarterback. But at the same time, no one knows. No one knows. And that's kind of what's really intriguing about this season for me, is that every week when you go into it, you have the prospect of seeing something like, wow, this could be really good. So we'll see. Brian, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts exactly. We need to see him grow. And, you brought up Big 12. I watched a lot of West Virginia games over the years. I mean, the defense is, I don't even know where they get these guys to play defense. And these receivers are so much better. So let's let them grow. And let's remember that there's a learning curve. And this is the number one pressure position in football. You're called a quarterback for a reason. So, so he comes in, everything else is, hey, he's a quarterback on defense. He's the quarterback of the power play in hockey. Everybody's talking about the quarterback in business. He's our quarterback. Quarterback is the leader. It takes a while. You just don't come in after 5 games and light the world on fire. And if you do, a lot of the time, it's not sustainable. So these are the growing pains. He's the Mike Seaver right now of the National Football League. And if you don't know who Mike Seaver is, he's from Kirk Cameron from Growing Pains. And I'm not going to go into the theme song. I know a lot of you want to hear me sing. I'm not going to do that, but I'm just saying, let him grow and realize that you have a potential really good player here.
Yeah. And so we'll see. Like I said, the 2019 season, if I were to sum it up into one word, it's intriguing. That's it for me. And I say that as a website editor and writer because intriguing means traffic a lot of times. There's different facets of this season. Ben Roethlisberger goes down. Mason Rudolph comes in. They trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Devin Bush, they trade up to get him. And how's he playing? There's a lot of intriguing factors on this team. Bud Dupree now suddenly bouncing back and showing what he's capable of. Chris Boswell literally bouncing back and having a good season. So it'll be interesting to see. I do want to say we have $5 in the tip jar from X Eddie B. He says Rudolph just needs to be good, not great. We have to pay the defense first. I would agree with that. They don't need Mason Rudolph to go out there and win most games. What they have to do is hope that he goes out there and doesn't lose games. And I think that's the offensive philosophy from Randy Fichtner, probably passed down from Mike Tomlin when it comes to the game plan. And I think that, Brian, you and I would both agree that we're hoping that that slowly changes and that you see the leash get a little bit longer with Mason Rudolph as the season goes on. Yes?
We watched the leash get longer with Ben Roethlisberger and every other guy that came through this system. We watched the leash be taken off of a guy like Terry Bradshaw and put back on the bench before he finally got it together. So quarterback's just a different animal.
Well, and two, you saw against the Colts in Week 9, they come out in a no huddle. They move the ball down the field rather quickly, and then all of a sudden they go away from it. And you're like, well, wait a second. They never revisit the no huddle again. My guess is that they practiced that sequence. They got the ball first. They ran the no huddle. It was effective. Hopefully, it's one of those situations where this is kind of like, wow, that worked. Maybe we can revisit that and use that as another weapon in our arsenal, so to speak. Steeler fan number 74 says, Jeff, do you think the offensive scheme still needs to adapt to Mason? Yes and no. I mean, at this point in time, I think where he is in his career, you have a good feel for what he can and can't do well. In other words, right now, throwing between the numbers down the field is a struggle for him. So you're not going to dial up a lot of seam passes, but that doesn't mean that eventually he won't get there. I think that what they should be doing now is getting comfort. Randy Fichtner should have a good comfort level with Mason Rudolph as for what he likes to do. Running plays out of shotgun, running plays in the red zone that are out of this formation. And so that's where I'm hoping to see the offense continue to trend. And it has trended in the right direction. They've moved the ball better. The only issue was recently is that the red zone they've struggled. And I love Mike Tomlin that his question was during the press conference on Tuesday, what is the reasoning behind these red zone issues? And he said, really? Well, it's because you don't have your starting quarterback out there. That's one of the reasons. That Ben Roethlisberger is a 15-year veteran, and he's seen all the different defensive alignments and the defensive coverages, and he knows what play is going to work here and all that, whereas Mason Rudolph does not know that. So I think that the offense does need to tailor itself a little bit around what Rudolph does, but I feel like they should already have that feel. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's getting better, but I think the offense needs to adapt to 2019. And what is this run, pass late in the game? Run, pass, run, pass. Yeah, it's predictable when it's 3rd and 8. Wow, I bet she's going to pass the ball on 3rd and 8 in the red zone. So that's kind of, I still think it's unimaginative at times, but I think they're doing a lot better tailoring it to Mason Rudolph's game. So I'm not complaining about that anymore. I just still want some imagination. I think it's still too generic. I think sometimes a 13-year-old playing Madden could come up with a more imaginative game plan than what Randy Fichtner does.
You're not a Randy Fichtner fan at all.
No, because he was never hired to be anything more than a quarterback coach. Jeff, he is not the offensive coordinator that was hired. The offensive coordinator is Ben Roethlisberger, and now he's not. They didn't even interview anybody. They didn't even post the job. It was just like, okay, we got our Haley's gone. We've got our new OC. That's because that's who Ben wanted. And we have to keep the franchise quarterback happy. Now Ben's hurt, and now you have a guy that is generic. I don't even want to use vanilla because vanilla is a very rich flavor. I don't even want to call this vanilla because I love something vanilla. Vanilla Coke is awesome. Vanilla ice cream is actually pretty good, especially if you go French vanilla. But at this point, this guy is not vanilla. That's too nice to call him. He is generic. He is blah. He's bland. He's watching an English Downton Abbey with my mother-in-law. That's what he is. He's boring.
No, it's tough. I can't disagree with you. I definitely do think that they need to have. You wouldn't say fire the guy, would you?
I called for it on a point counterpoint not too far back, dude. I know they're not going to go out and get Wisenhunt. I know they're not going to go ahead and make a change now. Excuse me, that's not their style. But let's go back in time to 2012 12, I believe it was. And Cam Cameron was the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. After week 10 or 11, I believe it was around Thanksgiving. It was pretty late. They fired Cameron and they brought in Jim Caldwell and won a Super Bowl. So there's a precedent that it works. I just don't think this guy is a good offensive coordinator whatsoever. I think was a fantastic quarterback coach. I thought he was a good mentor to Ben Roethlisberger. I think he has value. Just like, hey, we're seeing Keith Butler. He's helping out right now. He's the defensive coordinator, but is he? Or is he the outside linebacker coach? What is he? We know Terrell Austin's in the house. What is he? We don't really know, but we know we have an offensive coordinator right now that's really not, because you think he was calling those plays or Ben was calling those plays. And that's going back to my old rant. I just say, maybe it's time. He's a super nice guy, but maybe it's time to go ahead and cut the ties on that. Because if I'm not doing my job at my real job, they're going to go ahead and say, hey, we're going to bring in somebody that's actually going to do the job. Just because somebody likes me isn't enough to keep me. I could be a great guy at work and tell really funny jokes around the water cooler, but at the end of the day, if I'm not producing, I got to go.
No, you're right. And so maybe he is on the hot seat a little bit. And it would be interesting to see. I don't think they're going to do anything mid-season, although I think
I don't either.
But at the end of the season, how do they? I guess he might be pinned to Ben. In other words, Ben's future and Fiedner's future might be tied hand in hand. So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming game coming up this Sunday, 4:25 Eastern Time. The Los Angeles Rams travel across country, and the Steelers are 11-5 under Mike Tomlin, I believe, playing West Coast teams at home. And the most recent game was a loss to the Seattle Seahawks. How many losses do they have, Brian?
I believe that they have. I believe they have 2. Inside joke of when I zoned out last week on the preview. But yeah, the Seattle Seahawks have 2 losses. And don't forget
there you go. They still have 2 losses. I want to go over the injury report quickly. The show is recorded on Wednesday, so if you're listening to it on Thursday or Friday, this is an old injury report, but this is the one we have right now. The following players did not practice, but because of injury, there were several that were not injury-related. No need to talk about them. Roosevelt next did not practice with a knee. Mark Barron, I'm sorry, that was not injury-related. Benny Snell with a knee, we knew about that. Trey Edmonds with the ribs did not practice, and Ryan Switzer with the back did not practice. I've got a hunch, Brian. I've got a hunch that we might have seen the last of Ryan Switzer this season.
Really?
I don't know what it. I read an article on the Tribune Review. The rookie, the practice squad running back that they brought up this past week has been returning kicks. I guess he has experience as return man. And
Tony Brooks James, I think it is.
Something like that. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's returning kicks in practice. Switzer's a little banged up. They're going to need the running back help because we know that Trey Edmonds might not be ready. Maybe Switzer goes on injured reserve with this phantom back/ribs injury, and that's the end of his season. And maybe his time at Pittsburgh. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of in conclusion mode today, just like I also had the conclusion when they signed Sutton Smith to the practice squad today, that they did it for a fullback, not for a linebacker.
Muy interesante.
Because Roosevelt Nix missed practice with a knee. Mike Tomlin said he re-aggravated his knee. They want to have a fullback on the roster. They don't have a fullback on the roster. He has experience in their system, at least a small amount, being a fullback. So they bring him back, and if they have to promote him, they promote him. And if you need to promote him, you get rid of Ryan Switzer on injured reserve. Boom, boom. There you go. I just solved the Steelers' problems.
Let me ask you, I love that. I mean, actually, that is very wise. In fact, if you could do that for baseball, they could hire you for the Pirates, the new general manager. I would actually vote for that. Let me ask you a question about this whole Sutton Smith thing, because I didn't really read into it today. Was he let go from Jacksonville, or did they sign him off of Jacksonville's practice squad and put him on?
I believe that he was available. There was no report of them. there was no report of he was being taken off another team's practice squad. So
Okay. Very interesting. As far as Switzer goes, Jeff, look, I think he is a very reliable guy with the ball in his hands. You know he's not going to muff it. You don't expect him to. He's very sure-handed, but somebody on the live chat called him Mr. Go Nowhere, and that's really what he is. And I know, I was passionate about the whole, maybe too passionate about the whole Deontay Spencer thing with my 20-minute rant on why they cut this guy. He's going to be a superstar, but he had another nice kickoff return for Denver the other day, and it's or was it a punt return? But the thing is, you need to, you can't be starting at the 25 every single time when other teams are starting around the 35. That's a position that I know they might be getting rid of it. They might be getting rid of kick returns in the future, but for right now, still have it. You need to be viable at that position. And that's, every week in the grades, Jeff, all I'm writing is on special teams. I'm like, Barry had another great week, averaging 49 yards. Boswell was 4 for 4. Some nice punt coverage, but as far as, and I write it every week, I don't even change it anymore. As far as the return game, it's invisible.
yeah.
And every week I write that. I don't know if you catch it. I don't even have to change it. It's invisible. There's nothing. And if there is a slight return, there's a hold. So it drives me absolutely crazy. And I think the fact that he doesn't have a lot of speed also makes it easier to to commit a hold because he doesn't have a whole lot of speed. So, I'm just thinking, as far as that goes, Switzer's not doing anything. Somebody just wrote that he was so much more effective with Ben Roethlisberger, but I'm not calling him effective in the New England game when he had like 8,000 catches and 4 yards. That's like Jerome Bettis in his last year, 3 touchdowns, -1 yard. And those were actual game lines stat lines for Jerome, but he was a Hall of Famer. This guy, he goes nowhere. So I'm kind of, I don't want to see anybody lose their job, but I'd kind of like, I have an emotional stake in this team, and I'd like to see them actually do something when it comes to a return game.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out the rest of this week, and maybe they have to juggle their roster a little bit. Maybe they don't. We'll see. But when you think about this, I don't want to get too in depth into the game this Sunday because obviously that's our job on the preview, which will air tomorrow on YouTube around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to check it out live, that's myself, Brian, and Dave Schofield. When you're thinking about like, okay, there's a couple players, a couple matchups that really should be highlighted, circled, red pen, whatever. What are some of those matchups of players?
Well, you know what? I don't really know who is going to be matched up against Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm almost thinking that it is a guy like Jalen Ramsey. But if I'm going to look at a guy on defense that I'm kind of wary of, it's Jalen Ramsey. And I feel like he is still in shutdown mode. And if Juju had a lackluster game last week, I'm thinking going up against a guy like Ramsey and that tough Rams secondary might be a little tough. So that's kind of a matchup that I'd kind of look at. And then number one, it's Aaron Donald against the offensive line. Wherever this guy is lining up, be careful because he will kill you.
He's a game wrecker, period. He can wreck the whole game plan. And so I think that's where you start is obviously Aaron Donald. But I'm going to say that for me, it's if the Steelers have any chance in this game, and they do have a chance. I really do think they're good enough to compete with anybody in the National Football League. They're going to have to pressure Goff. They're going to have to keep doing what they've been doing. And he'll make some bad decisions, and he will struggle if you hit him and hit him early and often. And so the Steelers can continue doing what they've been doing in terms of getting pressure, sacking the quarterback. The pressure has resulted in a lot of interceptions and turnovers. If they can do that, I think they have a chance. But if they can't get home for whatever reason, and they haven't, I'm trying to think, Brian, was there a game that they didn't get a sack this season? I think they've at least had one in every game.
They've had one in every game, yes.
They only got to Rivers once, but they hit him a bunch.
And I believe they sacked New England, Brady in New England once too. So
right.
yeah,
The defense is different. This defense is different than the week 1 defense, but Cam Kelly started that game. That's all I have to say.
that's very true.
So for me, though, I mean, if they can get to Goff and they stop the running game, that's a big one. And Todd Gurley can. You talk about Aaron Donald can wreck a game, so can Todd Gurley if he gets going. And as Mike Tomlin said, he's busting off five yards a clip. That's tough. That's really tough. So the Rams struggle in pass protection. That's something that's been known all season. So that's where the Steelers are going to have to really focus on. I'm not sure the spread is now. The Steelers were getting 3.5 points the last I saw.
That's the last I saw as well.
Okay. So what is your if you want to hold your prediction for tomorrow, or
because you know what, I will. Okay. Unless Lance does it. I mean, if Lance does
Lance does it, but I'll go ahead and give it.
Okay.
I'll give my prediction. You can hold yours for tomorrow. I do want to say, and I'll say it again tomorrow night, that Bryan actually picked the score of last week's game.
Never
he
again.
Predicted the score. He said 26-24, and I remember thinking to myself, 26? Like what? 26? There we are, 26.
Wait. What's this thinking to yourself? You were quite vocal. Well, that's a ridiculous score. You and Dave just blasted me. It's like, how are they going to get 26? It's ridiculous. I'm like, well, I mean, they're going to have trouble against that Colts defense, and then you've got 4 field goals from Boswell. At this point, I'm like, all right, I said it on the one show, so I had to put it on the burning question. Then I had to go ahead and put it in the article, the Bold and Bizarre predictions. So I was married to it. So when that happened, it was like 6 minutes left. We got a text from Dave Schofield. You and I got one.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no. And I was like, yeah, that's right, boys. Because as much as I want the Steelers to win, I want this 26-24 because I'm never they will never let me hear the end of touchdown zone, and the Seahawks have 2 losses. So I need something. And the football karma gods came down, helped me out on this one. So I got lucky. I mean, I'm never going to do it again. First and last time in my life.
I predicted a defensive touchdown, so I got that right. But I said 24-20 last week, and I was wrong. Now I know that for those of you that listen to the Standard as a Standard every week, and hopefully a lot of you that are chiming in right now do. It was a couple weeks ago, Lance and I looked at this 3-game stretch at home, and we kind of gave our predictions as to how we thought things were going to go during this stretch. And this is the game that I said I could see the Steelers losing, based on the fact that I felt that the Rams were a team that could turn it into a shootout, and the Steelers are not equipped to get in that type of game. Things can obviously change between a few weeks ago and now, and they legitimately have. And so I know I'm going to be called a homer, and I've never said that I'm not a homer, but I'm going to change my pick in this game, and I'm going to say that the Steelers win this game. Based on their defense is that much better than it was. And I think that they showed me so much last week. That it wasn't perfect. They still gave up too many rushing yards for me, and they couldn't get off the field. But I feel like this is a game against the Rams. The Rams just are they're kind of a finesse team, man. I feel like they are a team that is not going to go out and punch you in the mouth. The Colts were kind of that team with Marlon Mack and that big offensive line and Jacoby Brissett. But this team doesn't have that. And when Brandon Cooks is already ruled out because of a concussion this week, that's one less weapon you have to worry about. Steelers have been fortunate in that area, considering T.Y. Hilton didn't play last week. No Brandon Cooks this week. I think the Steelers are actually going to shock the world and beat this team. And I'm going to go with a score of, I think that they're going to put up, let's see here. I'm trying not to go all Bryan Davis here with my score prediction. I'm going to say 30. They're going to score 30 points, 30-24. They win. And I think Mason Rudolph has a good game. Is Jalen Ramsey going to shadow Juju Smith-Schuster wherever he goes? If I'm Randy Fichtner and we just chastised the crap out of him a few minutes ago, or Brian did, I would put him in the slot almost primarily. If Jalen Ramsey's not going to follow him to the inside, put him on the inside. because he'll be able to get yards there and you'll be able to move the ball. So I think the Steelers are, I really feel like they're on the cusp, offensively at least, on the cusp. And I think that from a running game, if they can get James Conner back, Jalen Samuels is healthy, so there's your change of pace back because he's proven the 13 catches last week. I like the Steelers to win at home and cap off a really tremendous home stand of 3 straight wins. Actually, it'd be 4 straight wins in 5 of their last 6. I think that they win. They advance to 5-4, their first time over 500. And for Brian's prediction, you're going to have to tune in tomorrow night on the Steelers preview to find out what that is. That's kind of, I like that teaser a little bit, you know? So
And subscribe to find out what time we're going to be on.
that's true. Yeah, a lot of people ask. I get emails all the time about our podcast, and someone said, "You when do I never know when you guys are going on live?" Well, there's pretty much a standard schedule for the most part. Most of our shows are on about 9 p.m. or roughly around there. Brian's shows a little bit earlier on Monday, but other than that, I mean, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get a notification, whether it's an email, whether it's a push button notification on your phone, that this channel is going live, so you don't miss a thing. So for me, I think the Steelers win. What do you all think? I want to see what the live chat says. What are your game predictions? And I want to see a score, and I want to see exactly how you see this thing going down. Let's see here. SV Will does not believe it. He says, you think Rudolph scoring on Ramsey? This is a game you need Ben and AB. These type of games are for star players. Here's my answer to that. Jalen Ramsey is one player. Okay. And so, yeah, he might take out one player, but at the same time, there's other options for the Steelers. It's going to be tough. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I absolutely think that the Steelers are capable. You agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, I really do. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I really think that and the question on the show, the title of the show was, are these guys starting to be for real? And I hope I didn't steal any thunder there, but
Nope.
this is the game that's going to tell you if they're for real. And the Rams are not the Rams that were in the Super Bowl last year. They do have some dangerous weapons. They have a guy back that wasn't in the Super Bowl, but and that's Cooper Kupp. But because he was injured, he's the guy that I feel you need to stop. But sure, they add Jalen Ramsey, but you're exactly right, where there's other places that they could go here. And I really think that this is a team that is coming alive at the right time with chips on their shoulder, a lot to prove. So I really like what version of the Pittsburgh Steelers we have right now.
If they lose this game, do you think that it's you said that if they win this game, they're back. But do you think there's a way that they could lose this game and still show you that they're back?
Absolutely. If you don't get murdered in this game, and you put up, Jeff, what if you lose 27-24 on a last second kick against a very solid Los Angeles Rams team? That means that they're kind of back. And I'll go back to let's look at the Baltimore game. They were, to me, they had that game basically won in overtime. Some really questionable things happened. Then you had the devastating field goal. They really had a team that's still undefeated in San Francisco. They had them beaten. They had the 2-loss Seattle Seahawks beaten, and things happened. Things happened in all of them. But they happened because they lost them, but they were on the cusp of winning all of those games. So if you lose this game by a field goal or even 4, but you're in it the whole time, that doesn't mean you're out, especially in this AFC. A lot of people have forgotten that they are now the number 7 seed in the AFC. 6 seeds go in. And you have you own a tiebreaker over one of the teams ahead of you in the wild card race, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. You go head-to-head against the Buffalo Bills that have some really tough games coming up themselves. So, look at it. This is not going to kill you. They're not at a point where this is threat level midnight to lose this game like it was a few weeks back. However, they can still be back. And what I'm saying right now is the answer to the show is, yeah, they're back in the equation. They're not back as a number 1 seed Super Bowl favorite, because they're definitely not. But what they are is they're now in the equation. People are looking their way and go like, look, here they come. And what did we hear all of last year? At the end in the playoffs, they're like, wow, if Pittsburgh would have got in, they could have been the most dangerous team in the playoffs last year with the way they were trending, but that was before everything fell apart with Mr. Third and Fifth and everything happening. But they could have been very dangerous if they had gotten in. So yeah, I would say they're back.
Yeah, and so I think that Ken says it best here. He said, "Still waiting for the flagship game for Mason." I guess I keep banking on that. I feel like there's going to be a game. You think back to Ben's rookie season, he had those 2 games against Philly and the Patriots that you could really kind of hang your hat on and say that was a great game. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for those games. Maybe it won't happen. Maybe it will. I don't know. This could be one of them. You're at home, 3rd straight game at home. You have gotten rid of the cobwebs, figuratively and literally, from the concussion, and I feel like this is a good chance for him to actually prove himself. We'll see if he can do it. So, Brian, before we call it a show, anything else to add to or say to Steeler Nation?
Steeler Nation, I love you. I think this is the game where we found out exactly who we are. Also, I want to just correct something that was on the live chat. It was a compliment towards me about my awesome old school San Diego Chargers jersey that is not. So I just want to go ahead and show this off. I'm from Johnstown, everybody knows. And if you know Slapshot and you know hockey, the Charlestown Chiefs, this movie was filmed in Johnstown. This is my Paul Newman, Reggie Dunlop jersey. So I'm rocking some Slapshot and my salute to J-Town, the Flood City.
Well, Johnstown actually had an ECHL team, the Johnstown Chiefs, and they played against my Wheeling Thunderbirds growing up all the time, and I had season tickets to, which was a lot of fun to go see.
And who was the coach of the Johnstown Chiefs their second season in 1988 for a few years?
I can't think of that.
His name was Steve Carlson. You might know him better as Steve Hansen, number 17, the Hansen brothers. He was the coach of the Johnstown Chiefs.
The legitimate coach?
Yeah, the legitimate coach. They took the Carolina Thunderbirds in 1989. I was a senior in high school, and I went to all the games, to the 7th game for the ECHL title. Also, Carlson went on to coach Bishop McCourt, which is the Catholic high school in Johnstown, most famous for a very famous Steeler alumnus, Jack Ham, went to Bishop McCourt. And so he coached them to 4 straight titles in the early 2000s. So something very interesting there. I digress, we're getting onto hockey. But everybody, if you love football, you still love Slapshot. I mean,
yeah.
It's a guy's guy movie.
Well, people that have been watching YouTube know that I wear Penguin jerseys all the time during shows and stuff. So, yeah, I'm a big hockey guy, which, by the way, the ECHL Cup at that time was the Raleigh Cup. And the Wheeling Thunderbirds were able to claim that cup, I think, in 92, 93. That was a really fun year that year. They're not even the Thunderbirds anymore. They're called the Wheeling Nailers. The Thunderbird name was sold.
and here's the thing. The Thunderbirds were the Carolina Thunderbirds, the team that I just mentioned, who beat the Chiefs for the title.
Those were great games. As an adolescent, we had season tickets, and I can name all the players and the teams. The ECHL now is insane. They've got teams in Vegas and
Bakersfield, Hawaii.
You're like, what?
No, I think they have a Hawaii team.
I think there's one in Anchorage too.
Yeah, I remember it was such a goon league. It was amazing back when the Chiefs came in like January of '88. When they came back, and they named them because of the Charlestown Chiefs, and they came in, it was just all fights and crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, and we would go all the time because it was cheap. You would go for about $6. You would get great seats, and it was just so fun. And I watched Slapshot a million times growing up. It was the ABC movie of the week. My parents taped it on a beta or VHS, but so it was like everything was X'd out, and I didn't find out how awesome it was until much later. But I mean, I lived that movie, and I was actually at the filming. My mom was an extra, and I was at the final game, but I have no recollection of it whatsoever. But I was
Cool.
in the stands as a child, as I was for the Tom Cruise movie All the Right Moves. At age 11, I was in the stands for that. I'm not visible, and like I said, I had no recollection of the first game, but I still know that I was there because my mom says I saw my mom. I could see my mom, but really interesting.
Yeah, you talk about the ECHL back in the day. I remember there was a game against a team, which I don't know if you know the scene, the Columbus Chill came to
Yes.
Wheeling, and there was a bench clearing brawl at the end of regulation. Game was over. Goalies were fighting. Goals were topped over. There were people on top of the goals, and they just waited until they got tired. It was the greatest thing ever. And they would have the if the Thunderbirds scored 7 goals, you could take your ticket stub to McDonald's and get a free breakfast sandwich the next day. They don't do stuff like that anymore.
Wait. Did you get a free breakfast sandwich ever at McDonald's?
Do you think the Thunderbirds ever scored 7 goals in a game?
Do you think Jeff would ever step foot in McDonald's? Is the question. That's what I want to know, Mr. Hartman. You're
Not
on the
anymore.
stand.
Not anymore. Not anymore. So, all right, very good. Thank you, Bryan, for your time. For those that stuck with us this whole show, we appreciate it. Remember, tomorrow night, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, the Steelers preview. Myself, Bryan, and Dave will be here breaking down everything with the upcoming game against the Rams. We talked a little bit about it today, but we're going to go in depth tomorrow night. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search BTSC Steelers Radio. Give us a thumbs up on this video. Subscribe. Don't forget that. And as always, Lance always says it, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. We'll see you next week for another episode of The Standard is the Standard.